I can either click here for a single procedure, or later on when you actually make programs you'll use this one here to add procedures. But I'll click here to start with, and I'm just going to give this procedure a name. So I'm just going to call it test proc for now, so we know what that is, and I'm going to click OK. And at the moment you'll see that the procedure pops up over here on the right hand side, and I can click to turn the tick on and off, and I can even click to look at it as a flowchart rather than code, but I'm going to stick in the code view. Now it's worth mentioning at this point that having my procedure showing on the right hand side here doesn't mean it's saved. All that means is that at the moment my program, my Coco, has got a procedure loaded in it. If I turn my computer off, I will lose this work. So I have to make sure that later on I save it. So it's not saved at the moment. You can see this, the save icon's greyed out. There is a file save as drop down menu which we'll use later on. So in a moment I'm going to add something to this test procedure. One other thing I wanted to show you before I did that was that we've got outputs and motors, but we haven't got an inputs panel. If we go to view and control box, I can switch on my inputs as well. So an input as opposed to an output will be something like a switch. So I can simulate, I can pretend I've got switches or sensor mats or whatever it might be plugged into my device. So I can still test things on my screen, but then when I actually use this with an interface box and I have real switches plugged in, if I press the real switch I will see this kind of effect coming on, and we can use this in our programs. So here's my test procedure. I want to add some code to that, so I'm going to go up to some code here. This is an output code. I'm going to say turn on output number 1, and I want to add that. Now I could run it now. If I run it now, watch what happens. All it does is it makes it happen as a single command. Okay, then it stops, which I can't reuse. I have to do the whole thing again. This time, instead of hitting run now, I'm going to click add. So I'm going to click on add, and you'll see now I get this red arrow. So wherever I click on the red arrow, it puts my code in. I'm going to do the same thing again, turn output, this time I'll use number 2, and I'll say add, and I'll put that underneath this one. I'm going to use another command called wait. So I'm going to say wait for, and I'll choose 1 second, so no, maybe 2 seconds would be better, and say add, and I'm going to pop this in here. I'm going to say turn output, and now I'm going to have turning it off, and I'm going to add that in, and I'm going to do the same thing again for number 2 and add that in. So I've got a really basic procedure here. So what you're going to see, it'll turn on output 1 and 2, which should be his eyes. It'll wait for 2 seconds and turn them off. So to run it, to test it, I come down to the play button here, and you can see it's all gone yellow, and you'll also notice as that happens, I'll run it again, it goes through and it shows you the pointing code it's at. If I wanted to do what's called step through, I can test my code this way. So every time I hit the button here, it moves through and shows me what happens with that code. Now it's still waiting for the 2 seconds before it jumps on. Okay, turns that one off, turns that one off, and then finishes. A procedure always starts with a begin and finishes with an end, and whatever goes in between is code. Now if I decided I wanted to change any of these things, I can change them by double clicking on them. So say for instance this one says wait for 2 seconds. If I double click that, I can now change this to 1 second, and then click change, and it changes my code up here. At any point I can come over to my commands and I can add more commands in. I can even move them around. So if I decided I wanted to have output 1 switch on after output 2, I can just drag that piece of code down and swap the order around. Up here, double click to edit commentary. I can double click in here, and I might want to say something like use with clown simulation, which is more of a reminder to me than it is to anybody else that I need to have the clown simulation switched on when I'm using this code. Last thing just to show you before we save, coming back over here to this test window, if I turn off the code and switch on the flowchart, I can see exactly the same program but in a different format. So now if I run it, you can see it running through. You can see there's the little dot that comes up. Let's do that again. It was very quick, so I've only got 1 second on now. As it goes through each of the steps, each of the lines of code, the little star goes in and shows me. Myself personally, I prefer to work in the code view so I can see what's going on this way. Okay, when we're happy with our procedure, then we do need to save it. And I said earlier that there was a difference between saving a program and saving a procedure. This one over here, the first one, opens up a procedure. This one over here adds extra procedures. So if I wanted to actually make a program which involved lots of procedures, I'd use this one with a plus next to it. Either way round, when I want to save, I need to save. So I'll click on my save button, find somewhere to put it. Okay, I'm just going to call this one my test proc. And you'll see there's already two in there, and they're called Coco project, C-O-C-O, so it knows which piece of software created them, and hit save. Now, at any point, if I close this down, so I'm going to remove all of those, so my program's gone. I've still got my inputs and stuff up, but I could, if I wanted to, bring that one back again by opening up. There's my test procedure again, clicking open, and it brings it back in again, so I can now edit it further, test it more, use it, do what I wanted to do with it. Okay, one last thing just to mention, the panic button up here. If I find that I'm running a program and things are going wrong, so maybe I've got some outputs switched on, they might be doing things I don't want them to do, so maybe there's a buzzer that's going and I thought it was going to be a light bulb or whatever. I can just hit the panic button and turn everything off in one go. Okay, off you go.